Okay, we're going to talk about cells today and parts of the cells and what kind of cells there are. So make sure you fill in the blank with a word that's underlined and in bold. Okay, what is a cell? A cell is a membrane-covered structure that contains all the materials necessary for life. That's what a cell is right there, that little thing. Most cells are so small they can't be seen with the naked eye. Smaller than what you would make with your pencil point. Cells are really small, but some cells are pretty big. Okay, that's an example of a cell. That's an amoeba protus. That's a plant stem. That's a bacteria. That whole thing there is a nerve cell. And the red part is a red blood cell. Okay, the invention of the microscope in 1665 by Robert Hooke made the study of microscopic cells possible. Robert Hooke looked at a piece of cork through his microscope, saw these tiny boxes. He named them cells, which meant tiny rooms in Latin. Hooke didn't see the same thing when he looked at animal cells, so he concluded that animals were not made of cells. Wrong. This is what Hooke's microscope looked like. And you can see it had a lamp, it had a eyepiece, it had a objective screw and stuff, and that's the cork that he looked at. The discovery of single-cell organisms and bacteria was done by Antoine van Leeuwenhoek. And Antoine van Leeuwenhoek made his own microscopes as well, but he also made improvements on the earlier ones. He was the first to discover single-cell organisms, which he called microorganisms. He called them animales because they looked like tiny little animals. He was also the first person to see bacteria and discover that yeast, which is used to make bread, are single-cell organisms. That's what yeast looks like, tiny little organism. That's what paramecium looks like. Again, single-cell organisms. And an amoeba, which is a single-cell organism. 200 years later, 200 years passed before scientists realized that all living things are made of cells. A lot of cells there. Through the observations of 3 German scientists, Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow, these scientists developed a cell theory. The cell theory, Schleiden, Schwann, Virchow, Schleiden, Schwann, Virchow, Schleiden, Schwann, Virchow equals the cell theory. So when you think of the cell theory, you think of Schleiden, Schwann, and Virchow. Matthias Schleiden studied plants, and he concluded that plants parts are made of cells. Theodor Schwann studied animals and concluded that all animal tissues are made of cells. And Rudolf Virchow, a doctor that discovered cells can only come and make from other cells. The cell theory, all organisms are made of one or more cells, whether it be an alligator, a lion, you, a wasp, or some kind of single-cell organism. The second part of the cell theory, the cell is the basic unit of all living things. A tree, a flower and a butterfly, a plant of bananas. All cells come from existing cells. What that means is when you have one cell, it makes more cells. That's what you're made up of.